Thank you, Manav. Yes, our experience has been that out of the countries where we are present, let's say some are in Indian Ocean all the way going down to the US in the Radisson at the airport, JFK, and the new one which we acquired in Africa. Some governments we find are extremely proactive, very, very friendly to the hospitality industry. They love the hospitality industry. And some don't, sadly. Or rather, I must admit, since we are talking about the policy issues, including at a time when the whole industry is facing an unprecedented crisis, it is the partnership with the government and your financial institutions and stakeholders. That's what is the key. And I was very disappointed, despite the 4 days long, the relief packages announcement, and every day me and my colleagues were waiting that maybe the next day is for hospitality, and that didn't happen. And in some respects, I was not surprised. I've talked about it in industry forum, that somewhere in the minds of Indian policymakers and politicians, hotel industry is a rich man's industry. In any state in India where we go, people chase us to put up a YY plant, and nobody wants to talk to us about our hotel industry. Whereas probably the overall economic welfare benefit, both by way of taxes and employment and generation of economic activity, is no less than any FMCG industry, rather more. So that's the kind of a dilemma that I think we are facing in India, in our Indian business. But by the same token, if we look at, I can give you an example of our farm in Philippines, where already the government came forward to support. Of course, there is a health and wellness element, so that helped. But the kind of a response that the tourism sector, the hospitality sector, received from day one was unprecedented, incomparable. So I think it's all about where you put the industry in terms of the bucket of from a planner and from a government's perspective. I was looking at some numbers to talk here, and I find that the overall tax incidence on hotels in India is 20%, whereas in Thailand, it's 8%. I mean, that speaks for the mindset itself. I think there is somewhere some serious introspection that needs to go amongst people like ourselves, and also the operators, and also the people who are connected with this industry, of where we have gone wrong in not being able to educate the policymakers, or probably convey the right kind of a message, give the right kind of develop an effective lobbying platform which is trusted, which is capable of introducing a change. I think some countries, my own country, Nepal, has not been able to do much, I must admit. Sri Lanka has done reasonably well. I think they came forward in terms of coming up with fiscal packages and stimulus to let the industry sustain for a period of 6 months to a year, and quite flexible despite those many of the sensitive issues when it came to furloughs and retrenchments or even layoffs. I think they have been fairly flexible, which is a good news. Whereas country like Maldives, they have chosen to keep the country shut down indefinitely. We really don't know when we are going to open. Now they are talking anywhere from September to December. So that's the end of the story, So I think it's very difficult to generalize. But I think I must say that at the cost of becoming being unpopular once again, that India is not doing what they need to do. Manav, I think I was waiting for that question. Actually, that's where, that's what is going to become probably a mantra to redefine your business model, even non-laser products. I mean, I feel that we are caught in a situation where even those properties, you know, who today qualify as business hotels are put in a situation because of social distancing and because of all the points, very important points, all our colleagues have mentioned just now. There is going to be a huge pressure on revenue. Okay, you have to reduce the inventories or use less inventories, remove the focus from the size of the banqueting, etc. And all that has a, so what do? I mean, I think, so we've been struggling in some of our properties here, and we feel that this is an opportunity to bring in a larger component of hygiene and safety factor, and slowly perhaps modify, you know, what used to be a simple kind of a rejuvenation massage into I would say the next level of wellness. Okay, it's a question of introducing a greater degree of confidence amongst the clientele that, look, it's a hotel which gives the highest degree of importance to health and safety. Okay, they follow all the norms. Okay, they don't compromise, and I think that requires redefining your business model, and that business model starts with your staffing. Of course, infrastructure is very critical. Like we've been now looking at multitasking. We've significantly cut down on our staff. We've kept our properties open in our Dubai business hotel, which recently opened, or for that matter, Sri Lanka or Kathmandu, and we've reduced the staff force. That send them out on furlough for about 2/3 of them, and we are still operating the hotel. I think it's an opportunity. As a matter of fact, we don't like it, we hate it, we don't feel good that you know, we've been pushed in a situation where we have to send our staff out, you know, away, even hopefully for a short period of time, but still it pains purely from a employer's perspective, relationship perspective. But I guess rather than shutting down the property, this is yet a better option. But we have started working on significantly reducing the guest to staff ratio, and it's working. So I would say that it's both, and then I'll come to your question specifically about the leisure property or properties which are with more natural quarantine, you know, the safari you mentioned, Manav. I'll come to that. So I think on the business hotel side, I think it's an opportunity to redefine the product in terms of use of spaces and in terms of use of staff, and by through sort of multitasking. Clearly, properties, you know, who are in the wellness, recognized in the wellness space, and resorts, destinations will bounce back very soon, very fast, much better than others, provided we can assure our clientele that they are being given the top of the line sort of care through, you know, highly sophisticated sort of, you know, the COVID related support system, you know, in terms of safety and health. So I think the leisure properties, to cut the long to answer your question in specific, has a chance of performing much better, bouncing back much better. Okay, with less adjustment to be done in terms of the business modeling, because they are natural. I use the word natural quarantine. You know, spread over away, and our safaris truly stands out in that direction. Like we kept our Taj Megoli Sarai open. We didn't even close for a day, and we're doing quite well. I mean, you know, I mean, Chitwan National Park. So that's the I guess the new direction that we'll have to look at. It's easier said than done. You know, the existing properties can't be modified abruptly and overnight. You know, and it's a long call. Let me, Manav, let me step in, if I may, and I'm trying sort of supplement to what Ashish mentioned. I completely agree, and perhaps I bring here a very balanced perspective because we also happen to be the largest banker here, and we are. Sometimes I wear the banker's hat and sometimes the borrower's hat.
Are you wearing a banker's hat right now and talking?
I'll wear a very balanced hat, you know, and what is fair to both. So I think I completely agree that moratorium is just a way of shifting the liability. It doesn't solve the problem, but it is required from a cash flow perspective. That neither helps the bank, if you ask me, because banks are not interested. We don't want to just go on building profits if we can't recover at the end of the day. So this is where I think the stimulus has to come in, the refinancing has to come in from the government as well as multilateral agencies. If not, that's not possible, maybe from the central bank. You know, I mean, and there are examples. There are examples of how UK or even a smaller country relatively, Indonesia has done, okay? Fantastic work. They've stepped in, they've brought down the cost of funding to 2-3%. I think that's what the industry needs. And also there has to be a restructuring of the business plan and projections jointly between the bank and the hotels. It's not enough. I mean, you know, it will be not in the interest of the bank to have a NPA. If the hotels can't operate despite we giving, let's say, a couple of percentages of rebate or by shifting some of the payment obligation, if you still are not in a position to, then I think the hotel is doomed, the bank is doomed. So I think there has to be a very well-structured plan of restructuring the cost structure. Again, it bounces back to the overall cost structure. Cost of capital is one very important one, but in case of hotel industry, human resource is another big one. And of course, there are many other taxes. I think one has to also focus in making sure small things add up, you know, maybe negotiate with the different credit card systems, talk with the insurance bodies, because they're everybody's skin is involved in the business. I think that has to be the mindset that if the industry collapses, if one of my client or one of my project which I've funded collapses, I collapse. So I think there has to be a collaborative effort. And there has to be a collaboration between multiple parties who are all associated in it. Thank you. That's why I offered to step in, because I think I can also relate as as a client for some of the brands we work with very closely, and also as an operator with our own brand. I think the relationships will have to be redefined. Okay, it has to be redefined. It has to be based more on coexistence. I think it'll have to be more on sharing of the costs. Costs will have to be met, you know, for both sides. But upside will have to come. It can't be that one side is able to ring fence one's overheads, including the corporates, and the other side continues to pay. You know, that won't work. Well, I wouldn't say one-sided, but I think the brands definitely, certainly, they are better off. I mean, in case in a situation where the project enters into a serious cash crunch, they are better protected, no question about it. Some who can't afford to dictate, they won't get paid, and some, you know, they will get away with whatever, irrespective of the situation they are facing. So what I'm saying, there has to be a much greater alignment, okay, in terms of P&L, whether it is EBITDA linked, whether it is post recovery of the costs, fixed costs, for both operators also have fixed costs, okay. I think that is something which will have to be thought about. Otherwise, it's very difficult to continue. It will become more and more challenging for the relationships to continue. And let me take a moment to also make a short observation on two previous questions you asked. One was about the human talent. I think we have to look at the timing issue. I think to address that question, it entirely depends. What is the kind of a time frame are we talking about? 3 months to 6 months to 1 year? By when the business will bounce back? Okay, I think there are different views across the industry, and also more importantly in different countries, in different destinations. I think it's a time for managing the relationship. It's sending out people on a probably a long deserved holiday, shared costs. Don't lose them. I think that's what we would do, because I think there is a huge investment that has gone in on the human talent. Probably you'll have to create new, we were talking about the F&B side. We have, but that's not going to be true for everyone. But in some properties where there are specialty restaurants, there is a buzz about the F&B, they will carry on with the F&B outlets. In fact, they will do extremely well in terms of home deliveries or even catering to smaller parties at home. And that's what we are beginning to do in some of our properties. I didn't realize that the quantum of that business is huge, and it can be built upon. So I think human talent is purely a matter of the time frame we are talking about, how long, and I won't be that pessimistic. I think come what it may, 6 months down the line when we have a similar conversation, perhaps we'll be talking a different language.